رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين بالقاسم المصطفى محمد ثم الصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين من الأولين والآخرين إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد، صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. Mu'mineen, mu'minat, brothers and sisters in Islam and Iman, Salamun alaykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So last night we ended by reciting the famous ayah that mentions fasting, the ayah in Surah Al-Baqarah, ayah number 183, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون. So we'll go piece by piece tonight to see maybe how we should look at this ayah. And then if we have some time at the end, we'll start to talk about the different levels of fasting that exist as well. So the first question that we had asked last night, right? Allah starts off by addressing people with iman, right? Ya ayyuhal ladhina amanu. It's calling those who have already had iman, right? Why call out to mu'mineen? When we think about fasting, nowadays people know, right? It's very famous. Non-Muslims engage in intermittent fasting for health. It's a very, prominent part of the culture. There's nothing special about it anymore. Everybody knows about it. Other religions, they have fasting as well too in various different forms. It's existed for ages. So why call to mu'mineen? Because typically in the Quran, when something is universal, usually you'll see Allah call people, Ya ayyuhan nas, and then mention something to them, right? Like, Ya ayyuhan nas antum al-fuqara ilallah, right? Like, oh mankind, you are fuqara, meaning you are completely and always faqir and dependent on Allah. So that's something that's universal that anybody can understand, that we always need our Creator, right? Okay, anybody could understand that. Something like fasting, it's universal too. So why address mu'mineen instead of insan and human beings in general? So one aspect the Mufassirin give is this. One presumption that we have, that we bring into the concept of fasting, that we have to kind of do away with. There are some of you that maybe fasting's not a big deal. It's easy now. You've been doing it for 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years, so it's not difficult anymore. You're used to it. Sure, there's a little bit of difficulty when it comes around, right? Especially the first few nights, but it's nothing to worry about. Not like when we first started off when we were kids and it was very, very difficult. Or maybe we were going to school and then it became a lot more difficult there, right? So fasting is not a super difficult thing for some people. But for the general population, even the general population of Muslims, it's still, because of most people's issues in life, what they're doing, it's not an easy ibadah to perform. It's arguably one of the most difficult ibadat that we have. Even though you're not technically doing anything, in not doing anything, that's what the difficulty lies in. Okay, praying for some people is difficult, meaning waking up early in the morning and doing that. But there's not too much besides that waking up part, right? Every other salah that you perform, whether it's in the afternoon or evening, if you know just the wajib parts of it, you can get it done fairly quickly. It's not even wajib to know what you're saying. Just get it done with and you're done with your duty, right? But over here, this has a huge physical impact. Spiritual as well too. But mainly because there's such a strong, heavy physical impact on us, that's what makes it difficult. And I don't think we have to sugarcoat it either. I know that some people, they try to say, oh, why do people complain about it so much? It's so easy. No, that's not the case. It's a very difficult ibadah. Fasting is tough. We have a certain way that we live our lives, right? We've been waking up. Some of us wake up, we have our coffee or our tea, we have breakfast, maybe we have some exercise, whatever. Then we go out, we do our stuff during the day, have our snacks, our lunch, take our breaks, come back, have our dinner, maybe snacks at midnight. This is a normal routine that all of us have. 11 months out of the year, we have this normal routine, and now for 1 month, we have to completely break that. Now, other parts of our life, you can break it up and it's not a big deal. But when it comes to eating and drinking, to maintaining energy levels, that's a very difficult thing to do. In And I'd say especially in the Western world too. Yes, in some of the so-called Islamic or Muslim countries, maybe because the nature of the society changes a little bit, hours of work might come down, people will take it easier at work. Okay, that's different. Maybe you can say it's slightly easier there. But I'll tell you, when I've been overseas too, people who are, contractors, carpenters, those who are out there, blue collar workers, they're still working in the heat too. In that blazing sun, when it's summer in Ramadan, and they're out there putting buildings together. And I've seen it for myself. People are fasting and doing that. Well, that's pretty difficult. So it's not an easy thing to do. And perhaps this is why some of the Mufassirin say, this is why Allah is addressing us as mu'mineen. Why? To say that, look, I know that this is a very difficult task, so I'm calling out and trying to entice you and encouraging you based on the iman that you have. If I just make it something that sounds easy, we might brush it aside. We might say, man, how does Allah even understand us? How can Allah claim that He's our creator and put this difficult task in front of us and not recognize that it's that difficult for us? It would give us a little bit of pause. But Allah here, by calling out mu'mineen, Ya ayyuhal ladhina amanu, He's trying to start off with loving words. By using we like to be called mu'mineen. Somebody calls you a Muslim, that's cool. When somebody says, yes, you are a mu'min, they are trying to show you that you have a higher level, right? And sometimes we feel good when we're addressed like that too. So Allah is trying to address, hey, all of you who are about to engage in this fasting, you are my mu'mineen. So these loving words are meant to be encouraging to us as we engage in this month of difficulty, right? So think about, for example, when we want to get our kids to do something that they don't want to do, that is going to be difficult, right? To clean up after themselves, to help do something around the house. You could just tell them, hey, pick up after yourself, and that's it, right? Clean this up. There's a chance they'll listen, but there's a good chance they probably won't listen, right? If you just address them like that. But if you start to use encouraging, loving words, you're like, okay, I need my special helper. Right? I need somebody with a lot of strength. Then you see that they'll jump up and usually they'll want to help out there, right? So if Allah's calling us out and saying, look, hey, I need people who have iman, I need them to get involved in this sort of practice. Okay, I've got iman, I want to get involved with this practice. What is it? So it's Allah kind of calling that idea out, right? So Allah is basically saying, who are my mu'mineen? Oh, you guys are my mu'mineen. You're my special mu'mineen. Okay, let me tell you what ibadat you're going to engage in. Let me share a hadith from Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam. He's reported to have said that لذة ما في النداء أزال التعب العبادة والعناء. He says that this pleasure that we find when we're called towards something, when we know that we're being addressed, especially for this ibadah, right? Allah is saying, no, I'm calling you. I'm asking you to come and do this for me. That, according to Imam Sadiq, that helps some of that difficulty, that tiredness, the laziness that might come, it goes down a little bit. And think about it, we mentioned it last night too. The numbers of practicing Muslims, at least just for Ramadan, skyrockets. It nearly doubles in the month of Ramadan. So clearly, Allah knows what He's doing when He calls people and invites them to this month, uses these encouraging words that people now who normally are not doing something, they don't care about other wajibat and muharramat, but for fasting, they find that inner physical and inner spiritual strength, and they end up practicing in the month of Ramadan. Salawat ala Muhammad wa Muhammad. And it's not just that. Allah adds to that encouragement too. Allah adds and continues to recognize that, yeah, it is difficult. And how I mentioned that it's difficult is this. كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمْ الصِّيَامُ كَمَا كُتِبَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ. This fasting, this practice, this is something, usually when it's translated as it's been prescribed upon you. So when it's translated like that, it makes it seem so, like legal, right? Oh, it's been prescribed to you and that's it. Or it makes it seem like a medical thing, right? This is medicine, you have to take it. And again, when somebody forces you to take medicine, we're much less likely to take it, right? When something is bitter like that and it's forced down our throats, usually people will push back harshly. Kutiba alaykum, you can describe that in different ways. A different way of looking at it is not to say that it's been written upon you and it's been made obligatory upon you, is thinking about it this way. Kutiba alaykum is that it's been pre-programmed into you. You have already, humans, you've already been coded for this. In your fitrah, in your soul, there's already this ability. There's this power that's unlocked when you, That's unlocked when you raise the volume on the mic again, apparently. That's unlocked when you engage in this practice of fasting. You didn't have it before, 11 months out of the year, it was sitting there in dormancy. But now, that power can be unlocked in this month. Maybe you could have accessed it before, because we know basically the whole year it's recommended to fast. But many of us, we don't engage in it, although it's really good to, but we don't. So Allah says, look, it's something that it's been programmed into you, and it unlocks all these benefits. So because it has that benefit, I'm going to make it mandatory for you in this month. But I'm not going to say that it's mandatory. I'm just going to tell you, hey, you've already been coded for it. It's something that's been programmed into you. So it's already there. Like, oh, it's already there. And then Allah continues, just like it's been pre-programmed and coded into people before you too. So He's addressing us as mu'mineen, which we are new mu'mineen, sure. But also saying that, look, other people before you have actually had the same prescription, the same obligation, the same coding has been done to them as well too. You are not the only ones. You know, there's some times where we feel singled out by Allah, right? There's foods we can't eat, there's music we can't listen to, there's movies we can't watch, there's a lot of things we can't engage in, right? We don't gamble, we don't play certain things, we can't do that. And sometimes it happens. Sometimes to kids, sometimes elders get a little jealous too. Like, oh, I wish I could go and eat this or drink that or play this or go and do that. Right? They have a fear of missing out on haram. Right? That's what ends up happening for some people. And when we feel like we're the only ones, like the whole world is quote unquote enjoying. They're not enjoying it. They're suffering because of it. But some people think they're enjoying it. So sometimes we feel a little left out. They get to do it, and I got to be stuck. I have to control my food. I have to control what I drink, what I look at, what I hear, all of this stuff. So sometimes we don't feel good when we're singled out. So over here, Allah's saying, look, you're not being singled out when it comes to fasting. There have been many individuals before you, many tribes, other religions. They have all been prescribed the same thing too. Yes, they are the ones who have slowly dealt and cut away from that practice. Other religions had the same idea, but they have edited it and degenerated it a little bit. Let me share an example that exists in some other faiths. I had a good friend growing up. He was a Christian. We were very good friends. And when the month of Ramadan came up, we would talk and share our different levels of practice and how things differed amongst us, right? So I'd mention, okay, so I have to wake up in the morning, I eat and drink, and then we have to stop for these hours, and then once nighttime comes, then we can break it again. And of course, everybody's favorite question, like he would ask, like, okay, so that means you can't have medicine, you can't drink water, you can't do anything. Like, no, we can't, nothing at all. Oh, interesting. And then he's like, oh, we Christians, we fast too. I was like, oh, that's cool. He's like, yeah, we fast, Lent. We do that fasting too. He's like, but our fasting's different. Like, we pick something meaningful and we keep away from it. I was like, oh, okay, that sounds cool. You're sacrificing, that's nice. Like, so what did you pick this past Lent? He's like, oh, I gave up peanut butter dipped or peanut butter covered pretzels. It's like, okay. I felt bad, but I'm like, so your God died for you, the Son of God died for you, and for His sake, you decided to give up a snack. Okay. Okay, alhamdulillah. So there's a difference in the level of fasting, obviously, right? And I'm poking fun on purpose, right? But there's an intensity to our fasting that other religions may not have. And some of them actually might have, more difficult fasts. It might be 24-hour fasts. Some religions have that as well too. But that's only maybe 1 day or 2 days at most. We have 30 days of this constant, 29, 30 days, repeating this same exact practice over and over again. Again, in the hopes that it's building us up, which will be the next point that we get to, inshallah. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Going back to the way that sometimes we have to encourage our children to do something that they don't like. When, we have to take our kids to get shots, vaccinations, things like that. When they're a baby, they have no idea, right? You just hold them down and it gets done. They have no choice in the matter. As they get older, then, they think they have some free will now and they can talk back. They can pretend like they can say no and try to say they don't want to do it. So now what happens? Again, you can force them. You can hold them down again. And some of you have stronger kids. It's very tough to do that. You can try to do that, but the experience is not going to be good for you as a parent, and it's definitely not going to be good for them as a child, obviously, either, right? So what happens sometimes, and this usually works if they happen to be the second child or third or et cetera, right? They have older siblings. What do? So if they have to go for their shots, either you tell them or you have their older sibling come and say, when I was your age, I had to get my shots too. Oh, really? Yeah. Yeah, I went for shots. And it hurt a little bit, but it went away after like a minute. It wasn't that bad. Oh, okay, then I can go then. Just knowing that somebody else did this before you is sometimes enough to say, all right, if somebody else can handle it, then I can handle it too. If other people, other tribes, other religions have handled this practice, then it's maybe not as bad as I think it is. Right? So perhaps that's another reason why Allah is reminding us that, yeah, this is not just for you Muslims. Other people have had this, and you are getting this as well too. Now, of course, there should be something different about our level of fasting compared to other individuals, right? And that's why Allah mentions at the end, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. Maybe, perhaps the difference over here is you might gain taqwa out of this. Maybe you start to learn to become more God conscious, be more aware of Allah as you're going through these practices. So what exactly does that mean? This is where now we can open up the discussion on the different levels and types of fasts that exist. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So in our riwayat, in the books of our ulama and our arafa, there are many different categorizations, right, and levels mentioned for fasting. And we've probably heard this stuff over the years as well too, right? That there's usually one group that just does the bare minimum, then there's another group at a higher level which tries to improve themselves to some degree, and then there's a higher group that really goes out of their way to improve themselves. That's a basic overview for all the different groups. So I'm going to put it in a sort of different way to make it a bit more, kind of modernized or contextualized for our society. The first group, which we had mentioned last night as well too, is basically, call them like the cultural fasters. Meaning Ramadan has become a cultural habit for them every year. And I'm not saying this in a negative way. It's a good thing, as we said last night too, that they have made at least 1 month out of the year that religiosity that may not have existed, they now, because of cultural pressures, societal pressures, guilt, whatever reason, they said, you know what, I'm going to start practicing this. I'm going to do this. So as we said, the numbers of practicing Muslims outside of Ramadan is maybe 30, 45%. It's not much. But in Ramadan, it nearly doubles and sometimes triples. It goes up a lot more. And that's a good thing. But typically, this group, for them, it's just about not breaking a fast. So whatever sin, guna, ma'asiyah they might have in their life, they're not really focused on getting rid of that. They're just trying to say, I'm going to fast, and I'm not going to break the fast. That's about it. It's even possible that they break their fast with something haram, right? It might even happen like that too. But alhamdulillah, they're at least keeping the fast, which is a good thing, right? For the full month. That's wonderful. Alhamdulillah. And as we said, this shows the power of the holy month and that their fitrah, their soul is still intact. It's not like some people can completely pollute themselves and they're just done with Allah. No, they have some meaningful connection there where in the greatest month in the Islamic calendar, they come and they say, okay, Allah, labaik, I'm here and I'll at least do this. That's just a good thing. Alhamdulillah, that's a wonderful thing. Now the second group, which maybe I'd say the majority of Muslims probably fall into, at least those who attend programs and things like that. This is now where you go from culturally fasting to religious fasting. So what does that mean? Religious fasting is that, okay, I know fasting is an obligation, so that's why I'm doing it. I know that it's an act of ibadah, that's also why I'm doing it. But on top of that, I know that Ramadan is not just about fasting. There's other things I'm supposed to be improving upon myself too. If the whole year I wasn't really reading Quran, okay, I'll make sure to do something, right? Alhamdulillah, they reciting a juz, at least for the weekends, maybe for every night as well. Over here, other individuals, they'll on their own, they'll sit and try their best to recite. Sometimes that means 4 pages after every salah or 8 pages after every salah, so they can try to finish a juz a day. And it's a wonderful practice because maybe throughout the year they hardly touch the Quran, but in this month they really improve the recitation. They sit, they listen, which is a good thing. So they know deep down that they have to improve themselves. So they engage in more ibadah with the Quran and more of a connection. Some individuals will increase ibadah in other ways, right? There's other a'mal, right? There's those daily Ramadan du'as. Some people make it a habit of reciting all of those. Some will now, out of the whole year, if Salatul Layl, Namaz al-Shab became very difficult, in Ramadan, I'm already awake. Why not do it, right? A lot of people, because they wake up that early, they can say, all right, let me at least get this 1 rak'ah of witr. I can do that very quickly. Especially if you do just the wajib part, it doesn't take long. It takes actually like a minute, and that's okay to do. You can skip the other 10 rakat if you want. right? If you don't have enough time or you just don't feel like doing it, it's almost a habit anyway. You can just do the final 1 rakat witr and then finish it, and that's it, right? Very quick, very short, right? Either before your suhoor, or let's say you have some times before Fajr comes in after you're done eating, then you can quickly do something like that. So that's a good practice if somebody can do that. And you have individuals who never do it throughout the year, and they do it in Ramadan, which is a good thing too. Others, as we mentioned too, when it comes to Laylatul Qadr, that's where, maybe other a'mal wasn't important for them. They don't really care about 15 Sha'ban. They don't care about other nights where there are these important a'mal. But you know what? For these 3 nights of Qadr, I'm going to put in some effort. At least one night, I want to stay up the whole night, try to do everything that's possible. And the other 2 nights, I'll at least do maybe half or a quarter of the a'mal that are there. That's a good thing. That means that there's something within them that is calling them back towards Allah to increase their ibadah. So what is the downside of these 2 groups? Because these are all positives, but there are some, downsides too. For the first group, it's obvious. If it's just about fasting, then they're not really seeing the main benefit that can exist in the month of Ramadan. Well, that's clear. And inshallah, hopefully we can get that benefit of trying to increase our taqwa. For this second group, because on paper it sounds good. A person's increasing their du'as, reciting more ziyarat, more a'mal, more Quran. They're trying to stop doing haram things. They're controlling their eyes, their ears, their tongue, everything. Okay, isn't that good? The possible downside to this is that for some individuals, ibadat becomes a checklist. Is that they're going to go through all of this. They'll recite the juz. They'll do all the a'mal on Laylatul Qadr. They'll do all of these things, all the mustahabbat, recommended dua here, all of this, but it's nothing more than just checking it, right? Like, okay, it's done. I just had to get it out of the way. It's not actually built out of a sense of, I really want to get connected to Allah. It's more of, it's something there, and because I do it, I get points. I get good boy points and good girl points for it, right? So some people, that's the draw, which is okay. Allah definitely entices us through rewards, but it's a drawback too. Because this month should be about getting closer to Allah, right? We are His guests in this month. He wants us to come and sit at that banquet with Him. But if we're just coming there for the food, Allah says, no problem, go eat, it's okay. You want the points? No problem, that's all right too. That's for this level, for that second level. So that can be a drawback for some. That's why there's these other levels that are available as well. So what are these higher levels of those who are not engaged in cultural fasting or religious shari'i fasting, but they're actually engaged in spiritual fasting? Fasting for a different reason. What is this? We'll explain after. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So understand this highest level group. Realize and recognize that those on that first kind of level, what they're looking to really destroy in the month of Ramadan is their appetite, nothing more, right? That's what they're looking to destroy. The second is trying to destroy any idea of sin, or they're trying to destroy any possibility of going to hellfire, right? That's what they're looking to destroy, right? And some of them may to some degree destroy their love of this world as well too, hubb dunya, maybe to some degree. But that third, that highest level, the most in-depth level, appetite is not a concern for them. Basic sins and things like that, that's not a concern for them. For them, it's not about destroying those things. At that third level, what they are focused on is destroying their nafs and their ego. That's what they're actually fasting. They are fasting from their nafs, from their ego. Everything that has that fragrance or that smell and that little bit of the nafs and ego involved in an action, they fast from that. So that sometimes means, for certain individuals who are on this path, that certain types of ibadah they actually do not engage in because they know that their nafs is involved with it. They might say that, look, I could go through a juz of Quran today, but I know that I'm doing that not for the sake of Allah. I'm doing it for the sake of just getting it done. I'm not doing it to build up any sort of connection. I'm doing it for my ego, so I need to get rid of it. So in fact, they may not, I'm not encouraging this obviously, but for that individual, given their specific spiritual journey, they may not recite the whole juz. They may start with going through a page, however much connection that they have. When they start to feel their connection waning and going, they stop. They say, okay, now it's losing the benefit for me. So I have to leave it aside now. Because my ego, my nafs is now encroaching and saying, no, keep reciting because you're getting the points and that's all you're after. Well, keep reciting, because other people are watching you, how you recite, and people are going to be asking you if you finish your juz. They'll be asking you about this. And if you recite the juz, you can answer and say, yeah, I do all that. And because you don't want to look bad in their eyes, you should do it. But somebody who's trying to destroy their ego in this situation might say, no, I don't do all of that because I'm not concerned with everybody else's opinions. I don't want somebody to give me, to say something to me and look at me a certain way or to behave with me as if I am somebody. Because that will obviously strengthen my ego, which I don't want in this month. Sometimes ibadah, the sharia itself, can be something we have to fast and push back from. I'm not saying do haram, that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying skip wajibat. We're talking about a different level altogether. As a person is so understanding, they're so self-aware that they know when their nafs is getting involved with the mustahabbat, with ibadat, with a'mal and things like that. So on this plane, what a person would have to understand is, okay, what do I have to do? What kind of things, what kind of anchors do I have to remove? Because this whole month, one type of anchor, as we shared last night, has been removed. Shayateen are gone, right? As the famous hadith, as we mentioned last night, shayateen are not here. There's nobody outside of us really, in a metaphysical sense, that's whispering, so to speak. But there are still other individuals and my own nafs that is still in play, right? So if I am pushed to sin, if I'm pushed to do something wrong, then now I can say, you know what? I can't blame shaitan, I can't blame shayateen, I can't blame anything else. It's me. It's always been me. I'm the problem here. I'm the cause of this. Shaitan's locked up. So it's me that's free right now. So if I see that I'm struggling physically with the fast, that I can't handle, not eating, that it turns me into a rude, angry individual, that's my fault. That's not shaitan's fault. It's not the fault of the fast. That's me. I have an ego problem. I have an akhlaqi problem, and I have to fix that. I've been anchored down to the dunya way too much. And Allah is trying to show me in this month that I have been using food and drink and caffeine and all these other physical means to try to maintain some semblance of coherence in reality. When maybe I have to start to slowly do away with that. Remember those habits that we have 11 months out of the year. Allah says, okay, maybe they're okay. Maybe they're not haram, but they're not good for you in terms of your taqwa, in terms of you spiritually building. So 1 month out of the year, I want you to try to see where these faults lie within you. Where are these anchors, these things that are chaining you down to the dunya? And sometimes for some of us, that physically, literally means the dunya. The dunya is holding us back. We still think of fasting as a very physical exercise. And again, maybe that is the case for some of us. And if that happens, then I have to say, okay, let me work on that. Maybe that means then I have to unchain myself and remove that anchor to any sort of physical connection that I have to the dunya in the month of Ramadan. So what does that mean? So for that first level of fasting, that means maybe I shouldn't overeat for suhoor and overeat for iftar. Maybe that means, okay, 1 spoon less or 1 helping less, to help me recognize that it's not all this food and drink that I actually need in the first place. And yes, there is technically in the scientific realm, there is stuff to back this up, that we have this misconception that because we left out so many calories, we didn't eat this much, we have to make up for it at iftar time. Scientifically, that's not accurate. That's not the case. It's our mind that tricks us. That we think I have to make, a plate twice the size as normal that I'd normally have for dinner because I've been fasting for so long. That's not the case. That's why, unfortunately, we see so much wastage happen in Ramadan, because people don't know actually how much they should be actually having for iftar. And the same thing for suhoor. We shouldn't be having like belly aches in the morning, and we shouldn't be having belly aches at night either. We should be in that same state that has been recommended year round, which is what? 1/3 for food, our stomach, 1/3 for food, 1/3 for drink, and 1/3 for air. That's the same thing for fasting too. I don't need to fill myself up for fasting. For my iftar, as many of our awliya and urafa do, and ulama do, they say, okay, I've got some salt, some warm water, maybe a date or two, and something small after that, a cup of yogurt or whatever, and that's okay. That's good enough for me. If I feel hungry after iftar, maybe like an hour later, okay, I'll have a reasonable meal after that. But to some degree, I have to tell my nafs, I have to put it in its place. I have to tell the nafs, no, this is not right for you. You can't treat me like this. My soul doesn't like this. So instead of our body telling our soul who's boss, in the month of Ramadan, we learned that the soul should tell the nafs, the body who's boss. No, the food that you craved and you desired and were enslaved to the rest of the year, guess what? You don't get it now. And in the morning, I'm going to lower your intake as well. And in iftar, I'm going to lower your intake as well. And so that you get used to this. Because you do not dominate me, I'm not an animal. And that is one way at that bottom level, we can hopefully build up a greater level of fasting. Inshallah, tomorrow night we'll talk about some of the other chains that hold back on the other two levels of fasting as well. And then we'll mention one of these beautiful hadith al-Qudsis that are shared, which really open up how beneficial and the highest level and maqam of rewards that actually do exist for those who are striving for that highest level of fast in the month of Ramadan. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala ahli baytihi at-tayyibin at-tahirin.